Good afternoon. Let's do some business. We're doing it live. Now, weekday afternoons at 4 o'clock, we get right down to business here with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air here, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, happy tax day. It's April 15th. Hope you got the job done today. Stocks closing lower today with the Dow making it 6 sessions in a row of declines. Investors now concerned about the possible next step in the Middle East after Israel was attacked by Iran over the weekend. Gold hitting a record high today. We also saw a lot of action in the bond world with benchmark long-term Treasury note yields hitting new 2024 highs after the latest stronger than expected retail sales report came out today for the month of March. We saw a seesaw session today, higher early on, but then lower at the close. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 248 points. The S&P 500 down 62, and the Nasdaq finished down nearly 300 points. Stocks giving up big early gains to end lower today after damage from Iran's weekend attack on Israel was largely thwarted. We'll be talking about that later this hour with Middle East expert Lisa Dafchari, editor of the Foreign Desk. She'll be joining me live later this hour. We did see the price of oil moving around $85.41 a barrel. Gold prices, meanwhile, rallying to yet another record high today. The price of gold moving up. In fact, popped above $2,400 on Friday ahead of the weekend attacks. Looks like gold today settled at $2,383 an ounce, up nearly $9 an ounce. That is a record high close. Gold, by the way, hit an intraday record high of $2,448.80 on Friday. The Times of Israel reports the U.S. has accused Hamas of being the barrier to a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, adding that Israel had moved in a significant way to submit a reasonable proposal in the ongoing hostage talks. We're following developments in the Middle East closely and following the latest headlines as they cross the wire. Sales of retailers up about 0.7%. In fact, that was the report at 0.7% in March. And outlays in the previous month were also stronger than previously reported, indicating the economy did get a boost from consumer spending in the first quarter. Looks like credit card delinquencies, though, are rising. Retail theft and crime overall remains top of mind here in Los Angeles for businesses. I'll talk about the latest reports with the Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve officer. Dennis Zine, will be on the line later this hour. Joining us live now on Your Money, the markets and the economy and the geopolitical upheaval. Joining us live now, money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2, and Forbes magazine contributor. Ken Winans, thank you very much for taking the call here at this critical moment following a nerve-wracking weekend, of course, after Israel was attacked by Iran in a barrage that we're still trying to assess the situation here. The Iranian strike on Israel was big. Tehran launching more than 170 explosive-laden drones, around 120 ballistic missiles, and about 30 cruise missiles at Israel. President Biden urging Israel, meanwhile, to use caution in any response to Iran's unprecedented attack and pressing allies for a united diplomatic front in a bid to stop the hostilities from spiraling into open warfare. Give us your reaction to this big news here, Ken Winans.
Frank, it's interesting as we look at what's going on. I mean, we know about Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, that's an ongoing stalemate. But now you have an odd redo of the 1970s. For those of us that can remember it or at least have studied it, we had several major wars in the Middle East right in the middle of the inflation spike, which, by the way, brought on the Arab oil embargo and all these other things that happened. So I'm always amazed at how history finds a very strange way of repeating itself. But we're not surprised by this. The world's been long prepared for it. Certainly the problems with the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and certainly now with Israel. But, Israel is handling it as best they can. I've talked to people who were over there. They were prepared for it. They have one of the most prepared militaries on the planet Earth. And they realize that it's just going to be a long fight. With this problem, which I have to say, I think goes back to our withdrawal from Afghanistan, Iraq, how we handled the whole Middle East war situation in the first part of this century, is sent a signal that America is really bewildered at what to do. So again, that basically brings on these aggressions. We'll see how it plays out for the rest of the year, but I think we better all get prepared. This is going to be a common theme as we go through the election cycle. Let me say one other quick thing. The nations around the world know our election cycle. For those of us who remember the Iran or the hostage crisis, they knew the election cycle with Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. When Reagan won, suddenly the hostages came home. They know this. And so, again, it depends on how it plays out with our electoral situation in November, but there could be a tremendous change of fortune based on the next administration.
On the Air Live with Money Manager Ken Winans. In the meantime, we saw gold hit a record high in what's been quite a streak here of record high closes, and popping above 2,400 last week, and at a record high close here today, just below 2,400 an ounce. Oil, of course, pretty much hitting new highs for the year here, given what's happened lately. Obviously, a tremendous economic impact, a financial market impact of what's going on around the world. What do you see ahead for both gold and oil here at this point?
When I always take a look at the day-in number, Frank, to see what moved. It's not just gold. It was copper. It was silver and gold. The metals are moving right now. And when that's happening, it tells you that they believe that basically the markets are telling us there's going to be a shortage of these things going through the rest of the year. There's a long-running debate. And look, I'm somebody who's not pro or con crypto by any stretch of imagination. I'm a certified cryptocurrency trader. I also trade gold. I'm a commodity trading advisor. But when you're looking at the way things should be acting when you have these kind of things playing out, the metals are showing more of the historical trend than I can dare say crypto is. So with that being said, I've had many people calling my office. My firm manages, as you know, quite a bit of money. And they're just basically saying they want to buy gold. They want to buy silver. They want to begin to stockpile these things. And these are not clients who are gold bugs. These are people saying, no, it's moving. I'm concerned about the world situation, and I want to add it to the portfolio. But Frank, there's one thing that we have to remember. The dollar is still very strong right now. This is very, very different than the 1970s. The dollar is really the currency of strength in the world right now. There was a report out, the emerging market currencies have been just getting hammered lately. They're talking about hedge funds are trying to buy into Mexico pesos because Mexico is so close to the United States. But the bottom line is the United States, the U.S. dollar, even with all of our misspending, deficits, interest rates, all of it included, the dollar is still where people are hovering towards. So there lies the one concern on people thinking that gold is suddenly going to go up to $4,000 or $5,000 an ounce. Not with a strong dollar, it's not going to. But gold is a good place to go for a part of your portfolio.
We've seen wild moves in the cryptos lately, and let's see, Bitcoin at around just below 63K here at last check, and this Bitcoin halving is coming up. Maybe you can explain that for us, and that's supposed to be happening this week. Ken, wild predictions ahead of all of this. What do we need to know about this big event for Bitcoin?
Frank, I got to tell you, I mean, as much as I'm trying to be a student of this, I don't understand how you can have something like when I think of a stock split. When a company cuts its stock, it adds more shares outstanding. So there's net no difference. But I've asked people who are really crypto experts on this, and they claim that no, we're going to have the coin because Bitcoin has a total of 21 million coins. That's it. And so there's debate right now that they're not going to be able to suddenly have that become 42 million coins. It is a wild discussion about how this halving is going to happen. Now, the simple reality of it is that I do think that now that we have it as part of the Wall Street arsenal with ETFs, the ETFs will have to play the game. I mean, a lot of the big banks, a lot of the big investment firms have committed heavily into crypto. We'll see how it plays out. But the volatility, the question you brought up originally, is the volatility going to subside at all? No. And let me tell you what I'm mainly looking at. When I look at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is one of the biggest commodity exchanges in the world, they set the margin requirements for what's needed in order to trade a futures contract. So in other words, they're saying, hey, fine, we'll let you have a future in crypto. However, we're going to require more money from you in order to place that down payment. Those exchanges are raising the margin requirements for crypto futures. And that happens when anytime there's volatility within an area. They do it with gold. They did it with cocoa. When they start getting worried about volatility, they raise what you have to have in play. So again, I think it's just a cautionary note that if you want to have crypto in your portfolio, you need to be aware that the volatility is going to be here to stay for a while, and you need to learn to buy the big dips. It's hard to do, but you need to be able to train yourself to do it.
And it should be noted on this program, as our listeners know, we talk to the biggest fans of crypto as well as the harshest critics, and been watching it hit record highs this year for a Bitcoin anyway, and now pulling back to around 63K here. And you see those wild predictions, Ken, with hysterically historical predictions on where Bitcoin might go. How do you digest all of that? And since you've had a chance to study it now, and what kind of analysis do you rely on for Bitcoin?
I always go back to the same thing. And you know what, you're asking a very big question, Frank. We don't have enough time on the interview to even discuss it. But I have learned the hard way that when I want to know what people's agenda is, when there's a report coming out, whether it's a stock, bond, commodity, crypto report, okay, who's writing it and what is the agenda? And so I started in this industry as an analyst. I know very well how the game is played. So you have to look at, okay, who's issuing the report? Where do they come from? Especially now with social media, where you're having a lot of these just things are going out there into the ether of the social media world, and we don't quite know where it's coming from. I would just tell people or certainly anybody who is even thinking about crypto. And by the way, even if you don't want to buy crypto, as a student of investing, you should at least be aware about it, just like with commodities or anything else. But I'm just telling you that these wild predictions, we'll see if they come true. I always love how people come and say, I was right about this. Well, here's the deal. Crypto had such a roller coaster run that when it was at its low, I did not see a lot of people clamoring to buy it right this moment. There was a lot of fear because of what was going on with everything, with the corruption charges, the insider trading charges, all this. So again, I'm very concerned about fair weather reports. I think caveat emptor is the word of the day. Let the buyer beware. But again, crypto right now is an uptrend. I'm following it technically, and I will trade it just like I do any other commodity. And from that standpoint, that's where I think you need to put your head if you're going to be a crypto trader.
On there live with money manager Ken Winans. At this point, Ken, we're all watching possibly Israeli response to this Iranian barrage over the weekend, and a direct attack by Iran against Israel. And at this point, Ken Winans, where would you be putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Frank, it's been interesting, and I'm gonna camp the discussion in a couple of different areas. I'm finding as I talk to investors, there's tremendous, I'm going to say, dare say, anger at how our elected officials have been handling things, both at the federal, state, and local levels. And many of them are, extremely frustrated with the antics that have gone on at all levels. And I am by no means an activist, but I have told people, if you're really concerned about what's going on in California, there is a really easy way for you as an investor, voter, to make your statement. It's very simple. Do not buy California municipal bonds. If you want to send a loud and clear message to your elected officials, don't give them any more money. Starve them. Don't allow them to waste your money. Don't buy them, and don't buy mutual funds that buy them. If enough of us did that, California would get a loud and clear message. If you waste the money, you're not going to get it from us because we work too darn hard for it. So that's the most political thing you'll get out of me, Frank. But I'm finding the anger levels are incredibly high right now on both sides of the aisle. Well, what I'm buying, you mentioned it. I am buying more gold. This breakout in gold is the real deal. This is not an overbought situation. It broke out of a major trading range. I think gold, the old adage, momentum behests momentum. I think this will carry higher. Again, I don't think it's going to go to these magical numbers that people have been talking about. But I think, again, if you were underexposed in commodities in an inflationary cycle, you are making a historically bad mistake. You need to reallocate your portfolios. Now that tax season's over, now's a good time to begin to do that.
Money manager Ken Winans on the air live with us here now. Tesla, Ken, taking a hit today. Looks like EV sales are not what they were expected to be, and Tesla laying off more than 10% of its workforce. I don't know if you saw this story that's come out this afternoon. Tesla laying off more than 10% of its global workforce, according to Reuters, after they saw an internal memo. So what about Tesla here and the rest of the Magnificent Seven?
You know, here's the deal. When I talk to people who are in the auto dealership business, I mean, certainly some of the best, and you want to talk about unsung heroes from the COVID crisis. Look at the automotive dealerships and what they had to deal with during that to stay in business. The big problem that they're having right now is the residuals on reselling electric cars. And from what I hear from people in the business right now, the residuals on a combustion engine are much better than they are with any kind of EV, and I dare say even a hybrid. They're having problems gauging what can we do on resale with these things. So there lies a big part of the problem of why people are hesitating on buying an EV. They just don't know if they buy today or they finance it today, assuming that the government's going to continue the subsidies. Will they be able to turn it around, resell it at a fair price? You know, investors or consumers are very smart. They care about these kind of things. And until that is answered, I think companies like Tesla, Rivian, and all the other EVs are going to have a real tough time convincing people to lay out hard money in an inflationary environment on these vehicles when there's no guarantee that they can turn around and resell them a couple years later. There is the primary problem that nobody in the EV world really wants to discuss. How are you going to get the resale values up? Until you get that solved, it's going to be a very tough sludge for all these companies, in my opinion.
With so much concern about the possible outbreak of war, it should be noted a lot of the defense names moved lower today, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and so forth. What about that sector here?
Well, the big thing that came out, it was actually interesting. Inflation hits the Pentagon as well. And I think that the generals and the admirals there had quite a surprise when they found out that the F-35 fighter program was going to cost $1.5 trillion to maintain it. This is so far above what they had in the budget. Again, inflation hits all levels. And so, again, and we have to have a strong posture, militarily speaking. But again, this is our primary fighter plane, and now they're saying that it's going to cost a third more than we thought it was going to maintain the entire fleet of these aircraft. We're going to hear more and more of this, Frank. We're hearing that we're behind pace in producing submarines. I mean, I can't even imagine what it costs right now to build an aircraft carrier, and then maintaining all of these ships and then these aircraft. I mean, again, this is the insidious problem with inflation. It hits all levels, and at some point in time, there is a crowding out effect where it begins to hit everybody in the pocketbook more than we even have today. So I've said before, we need to hunker down for a long winter night. Inflation is not going to disappear fast, but at the end of the day, it does end, and we do seem to come out stronger. I'm an optimist at heart. I think that will happen, but it's still going to take time to have it occur.
Ken, thank you very much for taking the call on this important day here today. That is Money Manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2, and also Forbes magazine contributor. Ken, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Good night.
Thank you very much. And right out to the freeways we go now, back here in Southern California on 790 KABC. Folks, let's be honest. Sometimes we find ourselves or a loved one dealing with a massive injury caused by a terrible accident by no fault of our own. Sometimes it's simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're good at preparing for earthquakes and fires, but let's not forget to prepare in case we're involved in a major accident. Critical to know who to call first. Clark Fielding became an attorney to help you in a crisis. Fielding Law is focused on justice and resources for you because they understand how the system works and what to do in the most horrific situations. I always say to put the Fielding Law team in your phone under the word accident, so all you have to do is hit dial. Believe me, you'll feel a lot better having set this up for yourself and your family in advance. The number is 833-88-SHARK. Again, that's 833-88-SHARK. With the population exploding and increased vehicles on the freeways, be proactive, prepare for the worst, and expect the best. But if and when you do need help, call Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. We'll be talking about the Middle East crisis coming up with Lisa Daftari here in just a few moments in reaction to the attack on Israel by Iran over the weekend. Stocks pulling back today in a seesaw session. The Dow down nearly 250 points, settling at 37,735. The S&P 500 down 61 at 5,062, and the Nasdaq down 290 at 15,885. The yield in the 10-year note is shot higher to 4.61%. Gold at a record high closed today up nearly $9 at $2,383 an ounce. By the way, the intraday high for gold, which was hit on Friday, was $2,448.80 an ounce. It blew past $2,400 on Friday. The price of silver, meanwhile, hovering near $29 an ounce now, pulling back slightly today, down 39 cents at $28.72. Tesla in the spotlight. Company's laying off about 10% of its workforce on disappointing EV sales. Tesla shares closing down $9.57 to $161.48. And in after hours, down another $1.03 back to around $160 and change. Among the defense stocks, Northrop Grumman down nearly 5 at 451 and change. General Dynamics down 312 at 284.75. Checking the cryptos now, we see a Bitcoin all over the place, down about 500 now at 62,804. Ethereum up 4 at 3,089, and Doge is back down to 16 cents. And now the latest news here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC, following the latest developments in the Middle East. Israel's air defense system successfully fended off what military authorities said was one of the largest combined aerial attacks in recent history. As we've been reporting, we saw the Israeli Defense Force respond to a barrage of about 300 Iranian missiles over the weekend, and the Israeli authorities say 99% of them were shot down. Also, the U.S. military was involved over the weekend. The USS Carney and USS Arleigh Burke shot down between 4 and 6 Iranian-launched ballistic missiles, according to senior U.S. military officials. Both ships were in the Mediterranean. Carney most recently made a port visit in Palermo, Italy on April 10th. Arleigh Burke is forward deployed to Rota, Spain. We're following the latest developments with Israel vowing to respond to the attacks by Iran over the weekend. Joining us live now is Lisa Daftari, editor of the Foreign Desk, Middle East expert. She's been following these dramatic developments all weekend along with us here. Lisa, thank you very much for taking the call. Give us your reaction to these epic events here.
The United States and Israel were waiting by and didn't know the scope of the attack, but it was much larger than expected. But thankfully, Israel's 3-layer defense systems, which is the Iron Dome, David Sling, and of course the Arrow, were able to keep all the weapons, almost all of them, outside of or not hitting the ground inside Israel. And of course, there was help. And I think that was a major part of the story, was how much help Israel got, particularly by moderate Arab states, Jordan, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, all rolling up their sleeves with the intention of helping Israel. And of course, that is a major part of the story as well. Right now, we are waiting to see Israel's war cabinet met hours after the war began. They have unanimously decided to retaliate, but the scope of the retaliation, the precise how they will retaliate, and the timeline as to when they will retaliate is unknown at this time.
Tell us about how this all played out with these drones moving slowly toward Israel. Apparently, it was pretty well known that the attack was going to happen, so they were able to prepare for all this. And the fact that the U.S. Navy ended up shooting down Iranian military assets, I should say, that also quite significant. Tell us how all this played out nervously over the weekend.
Yeah, it was interesting because a lot of the Monday morning quarterbacking talks about how, well, the Iranian regime did not mean to cause any harm. This was just a symbolic attack, and that's why we saw this all play out in slow motion. The Israelis knew when it was coming. They knew the time, the time frame for within 48 hours. They knew that it was coming, and there were hardly any injuries and no casualties. So therefore, this does not make for a serious attack on Israel. On the contrary, this is it came from the Islamic Republic turf. Many people believe that it would come from one of the proxies, as they have been doing for over the last 2 decades, is launching attacks from Hezbollah, more recently from the Houthis in Yemen, from Syria, from Iraq, of course, from Hamas. But this came from the Iranian soil, and that is why it is a much different and a different caliber of attack than we had previously seen from the regime. They had intended to cause harm. That is why they sent over 300 weapons over into Israel. This is not a symbolic attack by any means. And I think a lot of the calls for Israel to show restraint is a bit unfair. I mean, when you look at any country receiving one weapon, one missile coming into its territory, let alone over 300, that constitutes an act of war. And now to say that because Israel has the technology apparatuses that it has, it should almost be punished because we're almost inviting a second, third, fourth attack from Iranian soil if Iran does not show deterrence and does not respond to the attack over the weekend. So I think it's very interesting to watch. I think it's a lot of micromanaging of Israel's war, but Bibi Netanyahu has steadfastly, stayed the course and has said that Israel will do whatever it needs to do with regard to its national security.
And since the October 7th terror attack on Israel, it seems Iran is being treated with kid gloves by this administration. And again, on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, it says U.S. calls for calm after Iran strikes Israel. And of course, as we talked about the day after the October 7th terror attack, the Wall Street Journal laid out in great detail Iran's involvement in that terror attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, there has been double talk from this administration in many instances, one being between Israel and the United States. On the one hand, we think that the Biden administration is showing full support of Israel, but on the other hand, we heard that over the weekend, the talk that Biden had with Bibi Netanyahu, he did state that the United States would not be involved in any counterattack. And, although we don't want the United States or anyone to be involved in any war or escalation, but to say that part out loud shows distance. It shows that they're not on the same page. It actually is not very good for our ally Israel to see that lack of support by the White House. And of course, the Iran regime is very happy at that distance growing between the two. And secondly, when we see that either the Biden White House was either warned about the way that in which the Islamic Republic would attack Israel and did not show any deterrence. And secondly, everyone talks about the money, the fact that the Biden administration, from coming into office almost 4 years ago, has released billions of dollars back to Iran's regime that it has put right back into terrorism, has let them off the hook for vital sanctions, has allowed them to go on with their weapons program. The centrifuges are spinning. The IAEA inspectors are not let into the country, and we let them off the hook. We are at best serving a slap on the wrist with regards to responding to Houthi attacks on the Red Sea, and again, allowing the Islamic Republic to really abuse our ally Israel in the region. Look, that will have many, many dangerous consequences for us, for our assets, for the United States as well down the line. So I don't think this is a pinpointed moment. I think this is a very important moment with far-reaching consequences if the United States does not show deterrence towards the Islamic Republic.
And in fact, flat out, I don't know if you saw the reports, President Biden telling the Israeli Prime Minister that the U.S. will not participate in a reprisal strike on Iran after what happened over the weekend.
Right, and I think that part should not have been said out loud, regardless of whether the United States believes that Israel should attack or should not attack. And we know that they have tried to urge them and have sent representatives from the United States to speak to Israeli officials ahead of Iran's attack, trying to tell them that they must show restraint. We cannot handcuff Israel from defending itself against this existential threat. Again, this will only invite Iran's regime to another subsequent attack on Israel. It might not be tomorrow. It might be a year from now, 2 years from now, but we know that it's coming. This is something that they have sworn to do from the first days of the Islamic Republic in 1979. The Ayatollah Khomeini came into office and said, we are sworn enemies with the big Satan, which is the United States, and the little Satan, which is Israel. And they have kept their word. Every dollar they have spent in their regional efforts to put into terrorism has been guns and weapons pointed towards Israel, suicide bombers going into Israel. And of course, that means lack of security for our assets as well in the region. And again, to show any sort of daylight, we saw the same thing under Obama's administration, and we warned the same thing back then. We cannot chalk up that daylight as a difference of opinion or a personality clash between Bibi and Obama or Bibi and Biden. This has nothing to do with who is in the White House or who is sitting in the prime minister's seat in Israel. This has to do with a far-lasting relationship, a security and strategy relationship between Israel and the United States. Israel will always be our number one democratic ally in the region, regardless of who is in office, and we have to maintain that relationship and be extremely obvious about it to our friends and to our allies.
Lisa Daftari, editor of the Foreign Desk, will continue to track all this closely with you. Thank you very much for taking the call as we continue to watch the latest headlines with Israel at war with Hamas. Day 193, according to the Times of Israel, visiting targeted airbase. The IDF chief promises a response to the Iranian attack on Israel over the weekend. And also, the head of the UN atomic watchdog is concerned Israeli reprisal could target Iran nuclear sites. So we continue to monitor the latest headlines coming to us from the Middle East. Right now, out to the freeways we go here in Southern California on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. The latest report shows retail sales up in the month of March. Looks like retail theft also up. It has been up for quite some time. At last check, shoplifting up about 81% here in the Los Angeles area over the past year, with retail theft and crime overall top of mind for Angelenos. Let's bring in the Honorable Dennis Zine now, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, and current LAPD Reserve officer. I see at least one L.A. City Council member has been speaking out on the crime story following that horrific, brutal attack of two women at the Venice Canals over the weekend. Tracy Park speaking out about this, saying that this catch and release situation out there and criminals are the victim policies are just unacceptable at this point. Give us your reaction to the latest reports here, Dennis Zine.
Well, I commend Tracy Park for her outrage. And when her constituents get attacked, viciously attacked, she says that, she means it. I met her before she ran for council office, and she's very committed to public safety. Not every single LA City Council member is committed as Tracy Park and John Lee to public safety and to support the Los Angeles Police Department, the officers that serve the public. But clearly, crime is not going down. And it's interesting to note, Frank, I tried to pull the latest statistics from the LAPD citywide profile. They've taken it down. They are not listing the crimes in the city of Los Angeles. They've taken that website down, which I find interesting. Wow. I know they're coming up with a new program called the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. That's a new program coming online. It's not online. But in the interim, they've taken down all of the arrests, the homicides, the rapes, the burglaries, the GTAs, et cetera. You can't find those numbers online as we've been able to find for many, many years. The citywide profile that's been published by the Los Angeles Police Department is no longer listing those specific crimes that we look at and monitor where we are as public safety in the city of Los Angeles. And a recent article talking about crime in Los Angeles, and Gascon, the district attorney, and how it's gone up under his administration, and how the Los Angeles Times is supporting George Gascon. They support him in the primary, and I'm sure they'll support him in the general election for continuing the district attorney, a district attorney that believes in crime, does not believe in victims' rights, does not believe in incarceration. And it's terrible when we have the situation that continues over and over and over, and people come in from other parts of the region. They say, oh, I'm going to live in California. It's a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place. Many parts of California are wonderful and safe and secure. It's just sad that Los Angeles doesn't fall in that category. We have increasing crime. We have a police department that is shrinking every single month. Fewer and fewer people are joining and more people are retiring. So the system is not working as we need public safety here in Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County in general.
On the line with Dennis Zine here, the former LA City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, and still a reserve officer with the LAPD. And certainly the CaliforniaGlobe.com had quite an article saying the Los Angeles Times telling Angelenos they're wrong about crime, everything is fine. And this is the paper that supported Gascon. And now he'll be facing a challenge. Veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman coming up in the November election. Give us your thoughts about how this is shaping up here.
Well, I hope it shapes up that Gascon gets walking papers as he left San Francisco. Hopefully he'll leave Los Angeles. I mean, I don't understand how a person starts out in the LAPD, which Gascon was a member of the LAPD, retired, went to Arizona as a chief of police. Then he went up to San Francisco as a chief of police, then to district attorney's office. I mean, it's not that he doesn't understand the situation. Somehow his mindset has changed from public safety to let the individuals who want to commit crime continue to do that and prey on the innocent people. And it's sad. But this article is a wonderful article, and it condemns the LA Times for their backing of Gascon. And I think the Times will continue to do that. They've gone sideways. A lot of people have given the subscription up. They've gone sideways in their philosophy. Public safety is paramount. If you're not a safe community, nothing will be able to continue. And we know the smash and grabs that continue. We know that the Gascon administration doesn't want to prosecute. And there were 11 people that ran against, 12 in that primary election against Gascon. Many of his own people running against him. He's got like a 98% with his in office. 98% of his employees have no confidence in him. And that should tell the public something when it comes to public safety and supporting someone for the prosecutor of crime in the county of Los Angeles, not just the city, but the entire county of Los Angeles. Gascon needs to go, and we can hopefully bring back a semblance of order and discipline and public safety to this region, which is desperately in need of that. The Olympics are coming to town. Our population is not shrinking. A homeless situation out of control. But I commend Tracy Park. I commend those council members that support law enforcement. And support law enforcement means you're supporting public safety. You're supporting people who are potential victims, supporting those people so they don't become victims. And that's the bottom line. And that's what we need to focus on. And hopefully people will listen to this cry to wake up and pay attention to your public safety and that of your family.
And so Nathan Hochman, a veteran prosecutor, will be up against Gascon here in November. And, of course, Gascon faced a lot of opposition during the primary, and it will be a runoff now between Gascon and Nathan Hochman, the veteran federal prosecutor and the veteran attorney, and who has actually prosecuted cases in court, unlike what we've seen with the current DA.
Yeah, correct. And Nathan Hochman, I've met him before. I support that man. I think he will be an excellent prosecutor. He'll bring back what happens in Orange County. In Orange County, they have a public a prosecutor. The prosecutor in Orange County does prosecute criminals, and we find Orange County a safe place, unlike Los Angeles. So Hochman will be a good prosecutor. That's what we need for public safety. So everyone has a family, whether you're in Los Angeles proper or the surrounding areas, the other communities, the 88 cities around Los Angeles County, it's all part of this region. We need to make sure we have safe for you and your families, your businesses, and the smash and grabs and all these other types of crimes that are continuing for so long. We need to put a stop to that. We can only put a stop to that by making it work for everyone. And it needs to work.
Dennis Zine, thank you very much for joining us live here. Dennis Zine on the line, the Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member and longtime LAPD Sergeant, current reserve officer, live with us here. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back tomorrow at 4 with more on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan shares real stories from real people from all walks of life on The Sean Ryan Show. Comedian John Christ.
How long have you been in Nashville? Let's see, 2018 is when I moved here. I lived in an apartment. I didn't know anything about it. I lived in L.A.
You were living in L.A.? How was that?
Yeah. Well, let's see, good for my career. Send me to rehab, though, so that's pretty much the sum of it.
The Sean Ryan Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.